A good Chodesh, a good Yom Tov. It is such an honor to be coming back to Crown Heights, to the places Rabbi Krinsky said I had a chance to serve our dear Rebbe 30 years ago. It was such a great privilege. I was really overwhelmed by the invitation. I didn't think it was appropriate for me to be invited. I was not really in any way a major figure in cardiology. But I think the difficulty, as Rabbi Krinsky points out, is that the Rebbe wanted to be treated at 770, and he was in a very difficult position because the doctors who validly interpreted the situation understood that this was the type of case that's treated in an intensive care setting in a hospital coronary care unit, and that to take care of him at 770, even though it was his ratzon, would be potentially dangerous medically. Fortunately, I have a lot of people who helped me with this unusual assignment. I was a little hesitant to accept it myself. Actually, my wife, Myra, had much to do with pushing me to go for it after the second or third call from Rabbi Krinsky that morning. And it was a very, very difficult thing to undertake because it was just like many of the shluchim here who are given assignments in who knows where, with who knows what kind of outcome, with such uncertainty of the outcome and such uncertainty of the location to which you're sent as a shaliach. I too felt in a similar position. I was leaving home to go on a mission that might or might not, God forbid, succeed, and without the certainty that I would even have the medical backup. We were really relying on being able to set up something for the Rebbe that would be done on a very quick moment and be very effective. I must say, though, in backing me up on this, I had many, many wonderful helpers. I must acknowledge them here. I hope I don't forget anybody. First, I must tell you that my own training through Rabbi Herschel Schusterman was a very, very strong influence on my whole life. I also had the very privilege of meeting Rabbi Herschel Fogelman, my second Herschel. Rabbi Fogelman in Worcester, got to know my wife and I just a few years before this assignment when he helped marry us at the Worcester Yeshiva in my wife's hometown. And I felt an encouragement there. I must say Rabbi Fogelman was very instrumental in helping me stay with the assignment when he spoke to my wife Myra on occasion to make sure that she understood the importance of the assignment. I also had three wonderful, unexpected helpers who I had not really met before. Rabbi Krinsky, Rabbi Groner, and Rabbi Klein all were just outstanding in their support and love, both of the Rebbe and of the doctors, and in their cooperation and in their understanding of the case, and really implementing a difficult assignment. And there were many other people. I might mention the Rebbe's wife, Rebbe Schneerson, who was very, very dear to all of us, very, very supportive, very, very wise. Her intelligence was just shining, and she understood this case well. She understood the limitations. And of course, the Rebbe himself, who was a wonderful patient as well as a wonderful Rebbe, a person who can talk to you, understand you, and even when it came to his own health, made some logical inferences from our conferences with him. In going on this trip that morning, and as I mentioned, the uncertainty that was involved, I took special note in my tefillos that morning. I had to daven on the plane. I didn't want to take any time when I got to New York for anything but attending to the Rebbe. But I was really caught by a pasuk from the Akedah, in which Yitzchak asked his father that he sees the knife and he sees the wood, but where is the sacrifice? And of course, Abraham answered his son. He said, Elohim, Elohim, yira'es haseh le'olam b'ni, that God will see to it that there's a sacrifice in this case. And I said to myself, I have to really take a lot of notice of this pasuk, to really understand that this is how sometimes we have to take on an assignment. As a shaliach, you're given missions that are really depending on such faith as well. So I had to be of faith that God would help bring us through this very difficult crisis. When I came to New York and was brought in by the police escort, I was greeted by Rebbetzin Schneerson, who made sure that I had Kiddush first before taking on the assignment. But she assured me that my friend, Dr. Louis Tischels, at that time from Mount Sinai Hospital, was already in on my invitation. He literally dropped everything he was doing. He really had never really been with the Rebbe. He was not himself committed to a Lubavitch or Orthodox way of life, but was a very fine Jew in his heart. And he took this assignment, dropping a responsibility he had on a tour he had to give on teaching echocardiography, assigned it to someone else who came right in to help organize this case. I would say that if any doctor did an outstanding job on this, it was Dr. Louis Tischels. And his judgment and his wisdom set up for the Rebbe an immediately recovery of the Rebbe's situation. I might tell you that we couldn't tell you at that time how sick the Rebbe was. It would not have been fair to the Rebbe, and we, of course, could not tell the outcome. But to the cardiologist who took on this case, this was a very, very difficult heart attack. This was a heart attack that involved a radical transformation in the electrocardiogram. The Rebbe had lost his blood pressure. That's why he couldn't continue to direct the matter of staying at 770 after a while. And usually when doctors like Louis Tischels or myself or others encounter such a case, we don't expect a great outcome, let alone the return to really the functionality that the Rebbe operated at, because the Rebbe operates at such a high energy output that really this could not be expected in a situation like this. On the other hand, we didn't feel fair to tell the Hasidim about this just then, because we would worry that immediately people would turn their requests away from the Rebbe and not want to bother him. If their problems are relatively small to his weakened medical condition, they might never consult him as a Rebbe, and we might actually, in a sense, destroy his functionality as a Rebbe with a group of Hasidim who were unwilling to trouble him with their personal problems. We also, among ourselves, felt that the case did have a certain gravity to it. There was a potential that all our efforts might not come forward and bring about a recovery. We had a very fine medical team, as I mentioned, of course, Dr. Tischels being my prime helper here. Another very major helper was my own mentor, Dr. Bernard Laum from Boston, who had been my teacher or my Rebbe in cardiology. And he came in to help us. His senior advice was very much needed. And it also helped reassure people that there were some senior, older doctors on the case rather than us younger doctors. My old-time friend from Chicago, Larry Resnick, came in to help us. He was the doctor who was on, at that time, a military assignment from which he was released to help with the Rebbe's case. I'm sorry to say that Dr. Resnick met up with a difficult cancer in the course of years, but he was a very beloved and honored member of this team who helped us greatly. And we also had local Dr. Robert Feldman, who was at all times very faithful to implement suggestions of the doctors who were the cardiology team. You might ask, with all these doctors, how could we make any headway? Because if you've ever gone to many doctors yourself to seek multiple opinions, there are just that, multiple opinions. This one says this, and this one says that, and doctors are kind of strong-willed, and they think that they have the answer, and another doctor thinks he has the answer. You know how it is. And we had this potential, but we worked harmoniously enough. We weren't always in complete agreement, but the main thing is we had the Rebbe on our side. We had the Rebbe sit with us, and if 5 doctors or 4 doctors were meeting in a circle with the Rebbe, and he paid close attention to whatever we said, he made certain that he understood what we all had to say, and he also made certain that not one of us was ignored. He had the magical power of incorporating 5 different or 4 different suggestions and bringing them together in a harmonious manner that would actually lead to some forward progress. And no doctor walked out saying, he never listens to me, or he's looking always at the other doctor and listening to what he has to say. This is a very difficult thing to engineer. But as you can see from examples on these videos, the Rebbe was just able to do this with all people. He would listen closely to everyone's story, understand each one's unique position, and bring something out of it that was positive and constructive. And we all felt very honored by the Rebbe at all times. My other ally, Rebbetzin Schneerson, as Rebbe Krinsky mentioned, was someone I was in regular contact with. She was like a mother to me. She really took on a personal interest. She was even interested in what the Chicago Cubs were doing because she knew that was very important to me. But positively, she could actually read me on the phone better than I could read the Rebbe or the Rebbetzin. She would listen to a little call I would give every day and almost tell how the day was for me at the hospital with all the other patients, or how exhausted I might be, or how energetic I might be. She had great insight and intuition as to what was going on. And she made it possible for me to be in touch with the Rebbe without bothering the Rebbe with a daily call. And also, I had a way of judging how things were going, even when I had the advantage of some of my colleagues visiting as doctors and giving me a medical report. I always trusted the Rebbetzins' medical report first, and then weigh that in with the doctor's reports and come to a conclusion as to what needed to be done. Baruch Hashem, with all these wonderful helpers, we were able to move forward and see the Rebbe through a very, very difficult initial heart attack. And beyond our wildest expectation, the Rebbe followed a very nice and regular course of recovery that not only exceeded our expectations, but showed us some hope that he could even become strong again in his work. When it came time to consider letting him go from the surveillance, it was already Rosh Chodesh Kislev, 30 years ago today, and he was basically stable enough to let him go home, and Rebbe Krinsky took him home, and he even took a little walk to his home a few houses away from where he lives on President Street. Naturally, this was a very big victory for all Chabad because they saw that the doctors were more relieved about the situation. But more important than that was the fact that the Rebbe and Rebbetzin were reunited, which, if you don't know the Rebbetzin very well, is a very important part of the Rebbe's life. In fact, as he once explained to me, having his daily tea with his wife was on par with his need to put on tefillin every day. He really considered the privilege of being with a wonderful wife, a wonderful supporter, as a major obligation. He had to reciprocate her goodness to him with his daily little tea session. Almost as a model to all of us, because in your work as a shliach, you're likely to get involved with a lot of responsibilities. And these are very time-consuming responsibilities, but we might all learn from what the Rebbe did at home to take that time with your own family, even when there's so much to do for your followers, for your congregants, in your various posts as shluchim. It is also a fact that the Rebbetzin had a very, very keen perspective on the Rebbe's being. So she was like his Ashes Konegdo. She would sort of meter out his pace. She would even be his only intellectual sparring partner, because the rest of us were very courtly and careful with the Rebbe. I mean, often we ask the Rebbe questions in the third person. Does the Rebbe want to have a meal now? We would never even talk in the second person because of the formality of his being the Rebbe and our being only the doctors or the helpers. But to the Rebbetzin, it was his little island of hope that there was normal life, normal contact with family. And she really provided him this comfort. His going home was a very big victory on this level. Subsequently, I permitted the Rebbe to go for having a farbrengen, which was his first public farbrengen, was Yud-Tes Kislev. I must say my medical judgment wasn't so letter perfect at that point, because when we got to the farbrengen, everyone was just thrilled to see the Rebbe. That was my first farbrengen. I was thrilled to be there. But Dr. Resnick and I sat at the benches crowded like sardines with everybody else, protecting the fact that we were looking at the floor on monitors that were wired to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe had very, very irregular heart rhythm during that farbrengen when he would give sichos. And every time there was a sicha, we didn't know what to do. We were sitting there at the farbrengen. Everyone's having a wonderful time and smiling because they're so happy that this event is going on, and we're having the panic of our lives, because we're sitting there saying, a normal doctor would have this farbrengen stop right here, because why should we endanger someone? Irregular heart rhythms can be very dangerous. In fact, they're one of the most dangerous features of a heart attack, that sometimes the heart attack will heal, but an arrhythmia can do some big destruction. On the other hand, running up to the stage would have been very, very challenging too, because if you ran to the stage and interrupted a farbrengen, it might ruin any chance that there'll be future farbrengens, or people would be too afraid to encourage the Rebbe to go ahead and have more farbrengens. But Baruch Hashem, a minor came along, and with the minor, there was no arrhythmia at all. The sichas gave them arrhythmias, and caused us to have some arrhythmias of our own. However, when the minor came, the rhythm was just its usual smooth self that we had always seen up through that time before Yud Tes Kislev. So Larry and I agreed that we'll let him go ahead, and he went through the farbrengen, and we were very, very thankful to Hashem that we got through that thing unscathed. It could have been very bad. Our medical judgment was not letter perfect, I have to admit. We were maybe a little too unseasoned. We thought we had such stable rhythm all this time, but the farbrengen was stressful. And thank God the Rebbe made it, and subsequent farbrengens were much more calm and relaxed. And the nice thing, as you all know, the Rebbe gave to us 15 very, very energized years with his full heart. And we are here celebrating the legacy of this recovery. We know it occurred, but you have to understand the whole program. One of his major features of his legacy was the program of Ufaratzta, mentioned in this week's Parsha. The Rebbe really believed in the idea of sending shluchim to all corners of the world, the north, the south, the east, and the west, to bring to other people, even non-Jews, a chance to see what is offered in Yiddishkeit, what we stand for, what can be taught. And this program of the shluchim has only expanded greatly. It's now in the thousands of people. If you look at the numbers over the years, this is a great expansion. It was under the Rebbe's direction, mostly during the time after his recovery. A very major legacy. My coming here is very energizing to me because it's like a Yom Tov. It feels like Yom Tov here. We davened like sardines, like it was a Yom Tov. We pushed and shoved and sang like it was a Yom Tov. And I think that someone cannot go back to Chicago and explain this to anybody else. One can't bring up what I saw, what I experienced. But we're all here because this program is going so strongly. A very major legacy of a major refuah, a major miracle that happened starting 30 years ago. I wanted to express my gratitude to Hashem and my gratitude to all of you, many of whom I've met over the years, some of whom I've just met for the first time today. But the friendship and the love that I have for all of you is expressed in reverse by you to me. And it is through that friendship and love that this miracle came about. I really thank you all.